When I first started learning English, I didn't have access to fancy schools, expensive teachers, or advanced tools. In fact, many people around me believed that fluency in English was something only the privileged could achieve. But deep down, I refused to accept that. I knew that if I wanted to connect with the world, if I wanted to unlock opportunities that once felt impossible, I had to find my own way. In the beginning, it was difficult, painfully difficult. I stumbled over words, I mispronounced, I got laughed at, and sometimes I even felt like giving up. But here's the truth. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's the path to it. Every mistake I made was proof that I was trying, proof that I was moving one step closer. I didn't wait for a classroom. I turned life itself into my school. I watched movies, listened to speeches, repeated sentences again and again until they felt natural. I spoke to myself in the mirror. I recorded my voice. I even practiced when no one was listening. And slowly, I realized something powerful. Fluency is not about perfection. It's about courage. The courage to speak even when your voice shakes. The courage to keep going when people doubt you. The courage to believe in yourself when nobody else does. There were days I felt embarrassed, but those very days became my greatest teachers. Every time I pushed through the discomfort, I grew stronger. Every time I chose persistence over excuses, I became more fluent. Not just in English, but fluent in confidence, fluent in discipline, fluent in determination. Looking back now, I understand that you don't need the perfect environment to grow. What you truly need is hunger. Hunger to learn, hunger to improve, hunger to refuse to stay the same. That hunger will turn your weakness into strength, your fear into fuel, your broken words into powerful speech. So if you feel stuck, if you think you can't, remember this. It's not about where you start, it's about how much you're willing to fight for where you want to go. Don't wait for the perfect teacher. Don't wait for permission. Start with what you have, where you are, right now. Because fluency isn't a gift someone hands you. It's a victory you earn through persistence. And if I could achieve it without school, without privilege, without excuses, then so can you. The very first step in learning anything, especially a language like English, is to understand that mistakes are not signs of failure. They are signs of effort, signs that you are moving forward. When I began my journey, I was terrified of being wrong. I remember the first time I tried to speak with someone in English. My hands were shaking, my voice was uneven, and within seconds, I stumbled over words that seemed so easy in my head, but impossible to say out loud. The person smiled, not in a cruel way, but I felt a wave of embarrassment wash over me. In that moment, I wanted to stop. I wanted to hide. But here's the truth I learned. That single mistake was my first step. You see, we are often taught to fear failure. From a young age, we are told that being wrong is something shameful, something to avoid at all costs. But when it comes to learning English or any skill, mistakes are not the enemy. They are your teachers. Think about it. How do babies learn to walk? They fall, not once, not twice, but hundreds of times. Yet no one tells a child, stop trying, you keep falling. We cheer for them because we know that every fall is progress. Why then, as adults, do we suddenly start fearing mistakes? When I mispronounced a word, instead of letting it crush me, I began to see it as a signal. That mistake was showing me exactly where I needed to improve. It was like a light pointing out my weakness so I could turn it into strength. And every time I tried again, I became stronger. That is the first step. You must shift your mindset. Instead of thinking, I failed, you must think, I learned. I used to record myself speaking English. The first few recordings were terrible. I could barely listen to them without cringing. My accent was heavy, my grammar was broken, and I sounded nothing like the fluent speakers I admired. But those recordings became treasures. Why? Because they captured my mistakes. They showed me exactly how I sounded, and with every playback, I learned what to fix. Without those mistakes, without those painful realizations, I would never have improved. The biggest mistake people make is waiting until they are perfect before speaking. They think, one day, when my grammar is flawless, I will start. But that day never comes. Perfection is an illusion. If you wait for it, you will never begin. The first step is not perfection, it is action. Action that is messy, imperfect, and full of mistakes. I can't tell you how many times I laughed at myself while practicing. Sometimes I would say something completely wrong, and instead of feeling ashamed, I learned to smile at my mistakes. That shift made all the difference, because when you laugh, you release the fear. You tell yourself, it's okay, I am learning, I am growing. And let me share something powerful with you. People don't laugh at you because you're bad at English. They laugh because they see courage. They see you trying, even when it's difficult. And deep down, they respect that. Every single mistake you make shows the world that you are brave enough to try. So the first step, the foundation of becoming fluent, is this: embrace mistakes. Don't hide from them. Don't run away from them. Make them your allies, because every mistake carries a lesson, and every lesson carries you forward. The more mistakes you make, the faster you will learn. When I finally understood this, my entire journey changed. I stopped judging myself harshly. I stopped comparing myself to people who were already fluent. Instead, I compared myself to who I was yesterday, and every time I noticed one less mistake, one small improvement, I celebrated it like a victory. Remember this: your mistakes are the footprints of your journey. Each one leaves a mark that proves you are walking the path, not just standing still. And when you look back, you will see how far you have come, not in spite of your mistakes, but because of them. After I learned to embrace mistakes as a part of growth, I discovered something even more important. The first real step to becoming fluent in English is realizing that life itself can be your classroom. You don't need expensive schools, you don't need the perfect teacher, and you don't need to wait for the right moment. Everything around you, the movies you watch, the music you hear, the conversations you attempt, can become your teacher if only you open your eyes to see it that way. When I started, I didn't have the luxury of formal classes. But I had one thing that turned out to be far more powerful: curiosity. I remember sitting in front of the television, watching English movies without even understanding half of what was being said. At first, it felt useless. The words moved too quickly, the accents were strange, and the sentences seemed impossible to follow. But I kept watching, not as a student in a classroom, but as someone learning from life itself. Slowly, my ears began to catch familiar words. Slowly, the meaning began to form. That's when I realized fluency is built not just by studying, it's built by living with the language. Think about it. When a child learns their mother tongue, they don't sit in classrooms memorizing grammar rules. They listen, they imitate, they repeat. The world around them becomes their teacher. Every conversation with their parents, every word they overhear on the street, every story they hear before bed is part of their classroom. Why then should learning English be any different? The moment you treat life as your school, everything changes. I turned everyday situations into lessons. When I walked through the market, I tried to name things in English. When I looked at the sky, I described it to myself in English. When I read signs, menus, or labels, I translated them in my head. These small practices made me realize that the classroom was everywhere. I didn't need a desk or a chalkboard. I needed awareness and effort. One of the most powerful tools I used was speaking to myself. Yes, I had conversations with myself out loud, as if I were both the teacher and the student. At first, it felt awkward, even silly, but soon it became one of the best practices I had. I would walk in front of a mirror and introduce myself in English. I would pretend I was giving a speech or answering questions in an interview, and every time I did this, I grew more confident. Life also gave me something schools couldn't: practice without limits. A classroom has fixed hours, but life teaches you 24/7. You can practice while walking, while cooking, while commuting, while even lying in bed. That freedom is priceless. The key is to use every opportunity. If you hear a song in English, don't just enjoy the music. Listen to the words, repeat them, feel them. If you watch a movie, don't just read the subtitles. Try to guess the meaning before checking. If you scroll through social media, don't just consume content. Use it to learn new words, new expressions, new ways of speaking. At first, people around me didn't understand. They thought I was wasting time or even being strange, talking to myself in English or listening to speeches over and over. But I knew something they didn't. I wasn't waiting for a classroom, I was creating one. And in that classroom, mistakes were allowed, practice was endless, and lessons were hidden in everyday moments. The beauty of treating life as your classroom is that it removes excuses. You no longer need to say, "I can't learn because I don't have a teacher." Your teacher is everywhere. You no longer need to say, "I don't have the right environment." The environment is in your pocket, in your headphones, in your surroundings. The world is your environment. And here's something powerful. When you live with the language, it becomes a part of you. You stop learning English as a subject and start using it as a tool. That shift is where fluency begins, because fluency doesn't come from memorizing, it comes from living. Every mistake I made outside the classroom taught me more than a textbook ever could. Every word I learned from a song, every phrase I picked up from a movie, every sentence I whispered to myself late at night became part of my fluency. And the truth is, once you open your eyes to this classroom called life, you realize that learning never stops. It only grows. When I first started my journey with English, I thought fluency meant speaking perfectly. I imagined one day I would wake up, open my mouth, and speak without hesitation, without mistakes, without flaws. But the truth hit me hard. That day never came. The more I waited for perfection, the further fluency seemed to slip away. And then I realized something that changed everything. The very first step to fluency is not perfection. It is courage. Courage to open your mouth and speak, even when your voice shakes. Courage to try, even when you know you will make mistakes. Courage to keep going, even when people don't understand you, or worse, when they laugh. That courage is what builds fluency. I still remember the first time I spoke English in front of others. My hands were sweating, my tongue felt heavy, and my heart was racing faster than my words. I mispronounced simple words, my grammar was broken, and I could feel every eye on me, waiting for me to mess up again. For a moment, I wanted the ground to open and swallow me, but when I finished, I realized something surprising. I had survived. I had spoken. The world hadn't ended. That single act of courage gave me more progress than months of silent practice. You see, fluency isn't about knowing every word in the dictionary or speaking without a single error. Fluency is about flow. It's about allowing your ideas to come out, even if they're not perfect. It's about being brave enough to share what's inside you, even if your English isn't polished. The mistake most learners make is thinking they must be flawless before they can speak. But waiting for perfection is like waiting for the rain to stop in the middle of a storm. It never happens. Think about this. Children don't wait until they have perfect grammar before speaking their first words. They just try, they stumble, they repeat, they invent words that don't even exist. But they keep speaking, and little by little, they grow fluent. Why? Because they have no fear. Their courage allows them to practice, and that practice becomes fluency. When I understood this, my entire approach changed. Instead of being silent out of fear, I started speaking whenever I could. Sometimes my sentences were messy, sometimes people corrected me, and sometimes I got blank stares. But every single time I spoke, I got better. That's when I learned that courage is the real teacher. There were nights when I would practice in the mirror, giving imaginary speeches in English. At first, it felt silly. My voice was shaky, my sentences were awkward, and I would laugh at myself. But with time, that practice built confidence. The mirror became my safe stage, and those little rehearsals gave me the courage to speak in real situations. Even today, I believe courage is the most important part of learning English, because you can study for years, read countless books, and memorize hundreds of grammar rules. But if you don't have the courage to speak, fluency will always remain a dream. On the other hand, even if your English is broken, even if you only know a handful of words, if you have the courage to use them, you are already on the path to fluency. I remember once speaking to a foreigner. I had been waiting for this opportunity for months, but when the moment came, my mind froze. I forgot half the words I had prepared, and what came out of my mouth sounded far from perfect. But instead of giving up, I smiled. I kept going. I used gestures. I even laughed at myself. And you know what happened? The conversation continued. They understood me. Not because my English was perfect, but because my courage carried my message through. That moment taught me something powerful. People don't connect with perfection. They connect with authenticity. They don't care if your grammar is flawless. They care if your message is real. And to share that message, you need courage. So if you are afraid, if you hesitate to speak, if you feel stuck because you're not good enough yet, remember this. Fluency begins the moment you choose courage over fear. Each time you dare to speak, you build a bridge between your thoughts and your voice. And each time you cross that bridge, your fluency grows stronger. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is speaking despite the fear. And that, my friend, is the very first step toward fluency. When I first began to learn English, I wanted it to feel easy. I wanted smooth sentences, effortless conversations, and instant confidence. But what I discovered was very different. The first step toward real growth is stepping into discomfort. And if you're not willing to feel uncomfortable, you'll never reach fluency. I still remember the first time I tried speaking English to someone outside my comfort zone. My heart was pounding, my mouth felt dry, and I could almost hear my own doubts screaming in my head. The moment I opened my mouth, the words came out broken, uneven, and slow. I felt embarrassed, exposed, and small. But here's the truth. Those uncomfortable moments became the turning points of my journey. Discomfort is not your enemy. It's your greatest teacher. Every time you feel nervous, every time you struggle to express yourself, every time you fail in front of others, that is the very moment you are growing. Growth doesn't happen when you're relaxed. Growth happens when you're stretched. Think about the gym. Muscles don't grow when you lift weights that are light and easy. They grow when you lift something heavy enough to challenge you, something that makes you sweat, something that burns. In the same way, your language skills don't grow when you stay comfortable, repeating only what you already know. They grow when you step into situations that make you uncomfortable, when you try words you've never said before, when you risk making mistakes in front of others. For me, discomfort showed up in the simplest ways. Sometimes it was asking a stranger for directions in English. Sometimes it was ordering food in English, even when I knew I might get the words wrong. Sometimes it was standing up in a small group and introducing myself with my voice trembling each time I wanted to run away, but I forced myself to stay because I realized something powerful. Discomfort is the price of fluency. One of the hardest things I did was join conversations where everyone else was better than me. At first I felt like an outsider, constantly behind, barely catching the meaning of their sentences. My mind screamed, "You don't belong here, leave." But staying in that uncomfortable space forced me to adapt, to listen harder, to learn faster. That discomfort became fuel for my improvement, and let me be honest, it never gets easy at first. Speaking in English always felt like walking into fire. But what I noticed was this: the more I exposed myself to discomfort, the less it burned. The things that once terrified me slowly became normal. What once made me sweat eventually felt natural. That's the secret. Discomfort is temporary, but the growth it brings is permanent. Too many people wait for the moment when speaking English will feel comfortable. They wait until they're confident enough, until they know enough words, until they feel ready. But the truth is, that day never comes. Comfort doesn't come first. Courage does. And once you dare to step into discomfort, comfort will eventually follow. I used to practice conversations with people who spoke better English than me. Sometimes I couldn't keep up, and I felt embarrassed. But in that space of discomfort, I learned new words, new expressions, and even the rhythm of natural speech. That discomfort taught me far more than any book ever could. Here's something I want you to remember. Every time you feel uncomfortable while learning English, it means you're exactly where you need to be. That shaking voice, that nervous laugh, that moment of silence when you forget the right word, those are not failures. Those are signs that you're learning. Those are signs that you're stretching yourself into a new level. So if you feel uncomfortable speaking English, don't run from it. Lean into it. Let that discomfort guide you, because the truth is, fluency hides on the other side of discomfort. The classroom of comfort will never teach you what the classroom of discomfort will. The first step is not waiting until you feel ready. The first step is saying, I'm willing to be uncomfortable, I'm willing to look foolish, I'm willing to struggle, because this struggle is my teacher. And once you accept that, your growth becomes unstoppable. When I look back at my journey with English, I realize something powerful. The very first step to true learning is not about the resources you have, it's about the hunger inside you. You can have the best school, the best teachers, the best environment, and still fail if you don't have the desire to learn. On the other hand, you can have nothing. No classes, no tutors, no perfect surroundings, and still succeed if you have the fire to keep going. Hunger is the real fuel. When I started, I had very little. No fancy dictionaries, no language apps, no endless shelves of grammar books. What I did have was a deep hunger, a hunger to grow, to connect, to prove to myself that I was capable. That hunger became my teacher, my guide, my energy. It was stronger than my fear, stronger than my excuses, stronger than my lack of resources. I remember nights when I sat in front of an old television trying to catch words from English movies I barely understood. My friends would laugh and say, "What's the point? You don't even get it." But I kept going, not because I had the tools, but because I had the hunger. That hunger told me, one day you will understand. Keep trying. Hunger changes everything. If you're hungry enough, you find a way. You repeat the same sentence 100 times until it feels natural. You stay up late practicing pronunciation when others are sleeping. You listen to speeches over and over until the rhythm gets stuck in your head. You practice with strangers even when your voice is shaking. Hunger makes you resourceful. Hunger makes you unstoppable. There were moments when I felt left behind. I would see others with access to private tutors, international schools, and perfect study environments. For a second, I envied them. But then I reminded myself, tools don't guarantee success. Motivation does. Even if you hand someone the best book in the world, if they don't have the hunger, that book will collect dust. But give a hungry learner just one page, and they will squeeze every drop of knowledge from it. And that's what I did. I squeezed every drop out of whatever I had. If I had a small English magazine, I read it 10 times. If I had a single audio clip, I replayed it until I could mimic every sound. If I had no partner to practice with, I became my own partner. I spoke to myself, argued with myself, told stories to myself in English. That hunger didn't need permission. It didn't wait for perfect conditions. It made the conditions. Here's something I learned along the way. Hunger protects you from excuses. When you're hungry, you don't say, "I don't have time." You find time. You don't say, "I don't have money." You use what's free. You don't say, "I don't have support." You support yourself. Because when the desire burns inside you, nothing outside can stop you. I cannot count how many times I wanted to quit. There were days when progress felt invisible, when my mistakes were louder than my improvements, when my effort felt wasted. But my hunger pulled me back every single time. I would ask myself, "Do you still want this?" And the answer was always yes. That yes kept me moving. Hunger also changes how you see obstacles. Instead of saying, "This is too hard," you say, "This is my chance to grow stronger." Instead of saying, "I can't," you say, "I will figure it out." That's what hunger does. It flips your mindset from weakness to strength, from doubt to determination. If there is one thing I've learned, it's that hunger can achieve what resources cannot. Hunger will push you to practice even when you're tired. Hunger will make you repeat the same lesson until it's engraved in your mind. Hunger will carry you through the days when you feel stuck, lost, or embarrassed. Hunger will whisper to you in the silence, "Keep going, don't stop. Your future self will thank you." So when people ask me, "How did you learn English without schools, without teachers, without special help?" my answer is simple: hunger. I wanted it so badly that I refused to give up. That hunger gave me focus, that hunger gave me discipline, and that hunger gave me strength. And if you have it too, nothing, not lack of money, not lack of environment, not even lack of support, can hold you back. When I first dreamed of speaking English fluently, I thought it was something that would simply happen with time, like a gift life would eventually hand to me. I thought if I waited long enough, if I admired fluent speakers from a distance, one day fluency would knock on my door. But life doesn't work that way. I learned, often the hard way, that the very first step in becoming fluent is understanding that fluency is not given. It is earned. Nobody is born fluent in English. Nobody wakes up one morning magically confident with perfect words rolling off their tongue. Fluency is not a present someone can wrap up and give to you. It is not something you inherit, not something you stumble upon by accident. It is something you fight for, something you work for, something you sacrifice for. In the beginning, I used to envy others who spoke English so naturally. I thought they were just lucky, that they had opportunities I didn't. But over time, I realized luck wasn't the reason. They had worked for it. They had earned their fluency through hours of practice, through years of courage, through countless mistakes. And if I wanted what they had, I needed to earn it too. Earning fluency meant showing up every single day, even when I didn't feel like it. It meant practicing words until my tongue ached, repeating sentences until my voice grew tired, and listening to the same recordings again and again until the rhythm of English sank into my bones. There was no shortcut. No magic formula, just persistence. There were days I wished someone would hand me fluency on a silver plate, that somehow a teacher, a book, or a course would instantly make me speak like a native. But then I understood, if fluency were handed to me, it wouldn't be mine. It wouldn't carry the pride, the strength, the resilience that comes from earning it, the struggle, the sweat, the failures. These were not obstacles. They were the very things that made fluency mine. Think of it like climbing a mountain. Nobody can carry you to the top. People can guide you. They can give you tools. They can point the way, but the climb is yours. Every step you take, every slip you survive, every moment you push yourself against the gravity of doubt is what brings you closer to the top. And when you finally stand there, looking back, the view means something because you earned it. Fluency works the same way. Every late night you stay up practicing, every embarrassing mistake you push through, every time you speak when you're afraid, that is you earning it. Those small daily battles are what transform fluency from a dream into reality. I remember sitting alone in my room, repeating simple sentences out loud. How are you? I am fine. What is your name? Over and over, until my throat was dry. It seemed boring, even pointless at times. But later, when those same sentences flowed naturally in a real conversation, I understood. All that repetition was not wasted. It was my payment, my proof that I had earned the right to speak fluently. And here's the truth. Fluency respects effort. The more you give, the more it gives back. If you treat it casually, it slips away. But if you chase it with hunger, discipline, and persistence, it rewards you. It rewards you with confidence, with opportunities, with doors opening where they once were closed. So many people quit because they think fluency should come faster, easier, smoother. But anything valuable in life is earned through persistence. Think about a farmer. He doesn't plant seeds today and expect a full harvest tomorrow. He waters, he waits, he protects the soil, he gives his time, his energy, his patience. And then, when the season is right, the harvest comes. Fluency is the same. You plant the seeds every time you practice, you water them with courage and consistency, and in time, fluency grows. So the first step is this. Stop waiting for fluency to come to you. It won't. You must go after it. You must earn it with sweat, with patience, with relentless effort. And when you finally reach that point where words flow with ease, you will know deep inside, it wasn't luck, it wasn't handed to you. It was yours because you earned it. And now, looking back at my journey, I realize something simple but life-changing. Fluency in English was never about schools or resources or privilege. It was about mistakes that became my teachers, about turning life itself into my classroom, about choosing courage over perfection, about embracing discomfort as a friend, about feeding my hunger to learn, and about earning every word through persistence. If you're listening to me right now, I want you to understand this. You already have everything you need to start. You don't need to wait for permission, you don't need the perfect conditions, and you don't need to be perfect. All you need is the decision to begin, the decision to try today, even if you fail, the decision to keep speaking, even if your voice shakes, the decision to stay hungry, even when progress feels slow. Fluency is not a dream reserved for the lucky few. It is a victory for those who refuse to give up. If I could achieve it without schools, without privilege, without shortcuts, then so can you. Your mistakes will guide you, your courage will carry you, your hunger will fuel you, and your persistence will crown you. So speak, stumble, learn, grow, and never stop. Because one day you'll look back and realize you didn't just become fluent in English, you became fluent in confidence, fluent in discipline, fluent in life itself. And that is a victory nobody can ever take away from you.